I woke up with a mouth full of hair. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the ache in my neck and the bitter taste on my tongue told me otherwise. My eyes adjusted slowly to the pale morning light filtering through the blinds of my childhood bedroom. The same yellow wallpaper, the same chipped bookshelf. Everything looked exactly how I remembered, except for the strands of chestnut brown hair scattered across my pillow like fallen leaves. My hair. I sat up, heart pounding, and reached up with both hands. The moment my fingers touched the side of my head, I froze. A whole patch near my right temple, gone, shaved down to the skin. Rough, uneven, humiliating. I swung my legs out of bed, stumbled to the mirror, and what I saw made me dizzy. I looked like a half-finished science experiment. One side of my head still held long, soft waves that used to reach my waist. The other was butchered, raw exposed. On my old vanity table sat a pair of red-handled scissors. Dollar store kind, dull from years of cutting old coupons and scratch-off tickets. Right next to it was a sticky note, Mom's handwriting, slanted cursive. Way too sweet for what it said. You're still beautiful. Don't make this about you. Just focus on your speech for Lily's big day. I stared at it, numb. Then read it again. Then a third time, in case I missed a part where it made sense. I didn't. Because there was no part of this that made sense. Unless you'd grown up in a family like mine. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't run downstairs and demand to know what the hell they were thinking. I just stood there, in front of the mirror, with half my hair missing, and the realization settling in like cement they did this to me. While I was sleeping, in my own bed, I picked up the scissors, turned them slowly in my hand like something dead. And then I picked up my phone. I called Becca, my best friend, my ex-roommate, the only person who'd seen me walk through every heartbreak this family had handed me. She picked up on the second ring. Hello. My voice cracked. They cut my hair. Silence. Then,
What?
who? My parents. Another pause, a breath. Then sharper. What the hell do you mean your parents cut your? They did it while I was asleep. I think they drugged my tea last night. Jesus Christ, Ava.
Ava.
That was me. Still was, technically. But in that moment, I didn't feel like myself. I felt like some stranger they'd carved into. Becca whispered something I didn't catch, then said, "Okay. Stay where you are. I'm coming." But I was already walking toward the bathroom, eyes locked on my reflection. Not because I wanted to see what they'd done. Because I wanted to remember this exact version of me. The one they thought they could erase. They'd tried to silence me before. But this time, they gave me a reason to speak louder than ever. Becca's plan. By the time Becca pulled into the driveway, I had already showered twice and still felt dirty. Not physically. Just wrong. There's a kind of shame that sinks beneath the skin. The kind that makes you want to crawl out of your own body and disappear. I didn't even hear her knock. She let herself in. She still had a copy of the house key from when we lived together after college. I turned when she called my name from the hallway. When she saw me, she stopped cold. Oh my God, I stood still. My hair was damp, uneven, and pulled into a makeshift side bun to cover the worst of it. It didn't help. Nothing could help. Becca walked toward me slowly, like she was approaching someone wounded after a crash. She reached out but didn't touch me. Just hovered her hand an inch from my shoulder. "They really did this to you," she said, barely above a whisper. I nodded. "They said I was being selfish. That Lily deserves the spotlight. That I was making everything about me." Becca's eyes flared. By existing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She looked around the room like she wanted to tear something down. Her gaze landed on the sticky note still taped to the mirror. She walked over, ripped it off, crumpled it in one hand, and muttered, psychotic. I let out a dry laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like if I didn't laugh, I'd crack open. Becca turned back to me. "Look, you're not going to that engagement party like this." I wasn't planning to. "No," she said, stepping closer. "I mean you're not going like this. You're going better? I blinked. What does that mean? She reached into her bag and pulled out a black case, one I recognized, her stylist kit. She'd been doing freelance makeup and hair for years. Becca grinned. It means we're about to give you a haircut worthy of a goddamn documentary. You're not hiding. You're gonna walk into that party looking like the twist in the story they never saw coming. I hesitated. I don't want revenge. Yes, you do, she said. And even if you don't, I do. An hour later, I sat in front of my old mirror, surrounded by hair clippings and the quiet buzz of her tremor. Becca had given me a sleek, sharp bob. It angled just below my chin, with one side slightly longer than the other. Intentional, edgy, controlled. The opposite of what my parents had tried to do. She finished, stepped back, and said, "Damn. You look like someone who just filed for emancipation and won." I stared at myself. It wasn't me, at least, not the version of me my parents recognized. But it could be. It would be. I swallowed hard. I need to say something, Becca. At the party? You mean like confront them? I nodded. I was supposed to give a toast for Lily. You know, the whole sweet sisterly speech they wrote for me. She raised an eyebrow. Wait, they wrote it? Printed. Double-spaced. It's sitting on my nightstand. Becca crossed her arms. Okay, new plan. You rate a speech, but not theirs. I looked at her. You serious? Dead serious. But, she held up her phone. Ava, you've been recording stuff for therapy for years. Remember those audio notes you used to make after every phone call with your mom? I stiffened. You think I still have them? Becca smiled. Let's find out. She was right. I hadn't deleted anything. I had almost 40 voice memos saved in my archive folder. Notes to myself, quick journal rants. Raw and real, including one where Mom had said, and I quote, Ava always tries too hard to be seen. It's exhausting. Lily doesn't have to beg for attention. It just comes naturally. And one from Dad. Pretty girls don't belong at other people's weddings. They're a distraction. Listening to those clips, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Rage, not loud, violent rage. No, the quiet kind, focused. Surgical, the kind that burns without making a sound. Becca looked up from my phone, eyes shining. Ava, they've been cutting pieces of you for years. Maybe it's time they feel the blade. And I nodded. For the first time in my life, I nodded. Because I was done being manageable. Done being edited. It was time to become unignorable. The calm before the reveal. The drive to the venue felt like a funeral procession. I sat in the passenger seat of Becca's car, watching familiar streets blur into fields of muted gray. The kind of dull that made everything, even memory, feel like it was underwater. We passed the bakery where my mom used to buy Lily's birthday cakes. The street where I learned to ride a bike, and no one clapped when I finally stopped falling. All those moments rushed back, not like nostalgia, but like unfinished business. Becca kept her eyes on the road, saying nothing. She knew better than to fill silence with empty sound. Inside, I was rehearsing, not my speech, but my breathing, my timing, my mask, because I knew how this family worked. They didn't respond to pain. They responded to presentation. A crying daughter could be dismissed. An angry one could be labeled dramatic. But a daughter standing perfectly still, staring them in the eye, with facts they couldn't erase. That was a threat. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was clear. And that was scarier than fury. The vineyard was absurdly beautiful. Of course it was. Lily's fiancé came from old money and knew her Instagram fame. Every table was covered in baby's breath and eucalyptus. Everything was beige, champagne, and soft jazz. The perfect stage for a family that couldn't hold itself together, but loved to be seen pretending it could. When I stepped out of the car, I could feel eyes turning. Some people didn't recognize me right away. The haircut, the suit, the posture. Others did. And looked down quickly. I walked past a group of cousins I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. One of them muttered, "Oh my God, she actually came." Becca brushed her shoulder against mine as we entered. "You okay?" I nodded once. My mouth was dry, but my hands were steady. What they'd done wasn't just about hair. It was about control. They'd spent years carving me down, word by word, favor by favor, expectation by expectation, until all that was left was a version of Ava that could sit quietly at family dinners and smile on cue. It was why I used to apologize every time I wore something new. Why I never posted pictures with too much makeup. Why I learned to laugh after Lily laughed, never before. That wasn't modesty. That was conditioning. And it was over. The party was still in the everyone pretending to like each other phase. Champagne glasses floated between perfect nails and rented suits. My parents were by the terrace, surrounded by family friends. All fake, smiling through white teeth and Botox. When Mom saw me, her smile faltered, just for a second. But I saw it. She walked over. "Ava, you came?" "I did," I said, voice calm. She glanced at my hair. Didn't say a word. Then, as if nothing had happened, she leaned in and whispered, "Remember to keep it short and sweet when you speak. Lily's been anxious about this all week." That was when I knew she still believed she had control. Like I was still the same girl she used to silence with a disappointed sigh or a pointed look from across the table. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I smiled. "I'll keep it honest," I said. Then I walked away before she could ask what that meant. At 20:37 p.m., someone tapped the microphone near the dessert table and said it was time for the maid of honor speech. That was me. Everyone turned to face the stage. Becca gave me a small nod from the corner. I could feel the adrenaline blooming in my chest like a second heartbeat. But I wasn't afraid. I'd been afraid for years. Afraid to take up space. To speak too loudly. To make anyone, especially Lily, uncomfortable. And what did fear get me? A scalp scar and a sticky note. So I stepped up, took the mic, and began. "Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't recognize me, the younger sister, the other daughter." A few scattered laughs. Nervous ones. I was asked to keep this brief and sentimental. Say something sweet. Talk about sisterhood. But I'd like to talk about something else. I scanned the room. My mother froze. My father looked up from his drink. I'd like to talk about what it feels like to grow up next to a spotlight and be asked, again and again, not to stand too close, not to shine, not to exist too brightly. A woman near the back gasped. Someone dropped a fork. "And I'd like to tell you," I said softly, "that when someone drugs your tea and cuts your hair in your sleep, it's no longer a family issue. It's violence. Dead silence." Lily's eyes were wide. My mother looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker. "Let's hear their version, shall we?" And I hit play. Playback. The speaker crackled softly before the audio kicked in. At first, it was nothing but the soft clinking of silverware in the background. I'd recorded it during dinner one night, weeks ago. I had tucked my phone into the corner of the table. Out of habit. I wasn't trying to collect evidence, I was just surviving. Then the voices came. My mother's first, casual and biting. She posted another photo. Of course she did. Ava's always been desperate for attention. She'll probably show up to Lily's engagement in something tight. It's pathetic. Honestly, a ripple moved through the crowd. People glanced at one another. Some whispered. Some looked down at their drinks. My mother sat frozen. Her lips parted slightly like she was about to deny it, but couldn't. Then came my father's voice, laughing. "If she tries to pull anything, we'll fix it. A little trim while she sleeps. Maybe she'll remember who this day is about." And then my mom again, lower this time. "That girl needs to be reminded. She's not the main character." I paused the recording. The silence afterward was louder than anything I'd ever heard in this family. Even the jazz band had stopped playing. Somewhere in the back, someone let out a sharp breath. A sound like a balloon popping. Small. Final. I stepped forward. "I didn't play this to embarrass them," I said, and my voice was steady, shockingly so. "I played it because this has been my whole life. Being trimmed down, muted. polished into a version of me that wouldn't upset the people who thought they were entitled to my silence. I looked directly at Lily. I love you. I showed up today because I believed, deep down, we could exist in the same room without one of us being sacrificed. Her mascara had started to run. She didn't say a word. I turned back to the guests. They told me not to make this about me. But it already was about me. The moment they decided my existence was a threat to someone else's celebration. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Then I handed the microphone to the event coordinator, stepped down, and walked out through the front doors of the vineyard into the sunlight. Becca followed seconds later, her face a mix of awe and fury. I think you just reset the entire family tree, she muttered. I laughed. It came out of my throat like it hadn't been used in years. Full. Alive. Inside, I could still hear the muffled buzz of conversation. Guests whispering. Recalculating. Choosing sides. It didn't matter anymore. Because this time, I'd chosen mine. 3 hours later, Becca uploaded the speech. Full video, start to finish, with the caption, "What happens when silence gets cut short?" It hit 1 million views in 24 hours. TikTok stitched it. Twitter debated it. Reddit claimed it as their own. But the best part came a week later. I got a DM from an editor at Modern Feminist. Then another from a producer at the Morning Table, asking if I'd be open to sharing more of my story on national television. And then, the email. From Nina Caldwell, founder of REM&T, a creative agency for survivors, activists, and people who were told to sit down and chose to stand louder instead. She wanted to fly me to New York. Not just for an interview, she wrote, but to talk about something bigger. A campaign we're calling Trimmed No More. The offer. It still felt unreal. 1 week ago, I was trying to disappear into my childhood bedroom, holding back tears while staring at a jagged patch of my own hair. Now I was sitting in the lobby of a Manhattan creative agency, watching strangers in power suits walk past me like I belonged here. Like I was one of them. Becca sat beside me. Legs crossed, hair flawless as always. She nudged my elbow. "You're doing the thing again." "What thing?" "That face. The one you make when you're pretending this isn't happening." I turned to her. "That's because I still feel like I'm going to wake up and find another sticky note on my mirror." She leaned in, voice low. "Ava, you burned the house down and walked out in heels. You're not dreaming." Before I could respond, the assistant called my name. They led us down a hallway filled with framed black and white photos. Women standing in protest, speaking at podiums, holding each other up. At the end of the hallway stood Nina Caldwell. She looked exactly how I'd imagined. Tall, sharp, effortlessly composed. The kind of presence that made silence feel like a statement. She reached out her hand. "Ava, I'm so glad you came. Thank you for inviting me." We sat across from each other in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. She wasted no time. "I saw your video. All of it. The speech. The way you handled the fallout. It wasn't just brave. It was surgical and necessary." I didn't know what to say to that. I had never been called surgical before. She continued. "We're launching a new initiative. A creative campaign that highlights people who've been cut down by the people who were supposed to protect them. We want to tell their stories loudly, honestly, and we want you to be our creative lead." My throat went dry. I'm not a designer or, "You're not a victim anymore either." But that didn't stop you from rewriting the narrative. "We'll give you a team, a platform. What you bring is voice, clarity, fire. That's what we need." I glanced at Becca, who smiled without even blinking. And for the first time, I felt something shift, not just in the room, in me. For years, I thought surviving was enough. That staying quiet and making it through was the best I could hope for. But sitting here, hearing a stranger say the very thing I'd always wanted someone to believe, that my story wasn't too small, too dramatic, too inconvenient. It rewired something. I didn't have to stay small anymore. I didn't have to ask for space. I was being offered it, and I was ready to take it. I looked Nina in the eye. "When do we start?" She smiled. "Monday." The window on Main Street. It had been 6 months since the speech, 3 since I took the job, 2 since we signed the lease, and now, here I was, standing on the same street where my mother used to drag me past beauty salons and call them wasted money for girls who didn't know their place. That street was now home to a corner studio with tall windows and white walls filled with light. Our new RAM MT regional office. My office. And across the glass, in bold lettering visible from halfway down the block, was the campaign title we'd all agreed on, You Can't Trim Power. We were hosting our launch open house that weekend. Press were coming. Influencers, alumni from my high school. A few local officials pretending not to remember the things they once laughed at. The only people who weren't invited. My parents. But that didn't stop them from showing up. Saturday afternoon, 5 minutes before the ribbon cutting. I was adjusting the mic stand near the front when the door opened. And there they were. My mother in oversized sunglasses like a movie star in hiding. My father in a tan windbreaker. Like this was a casual drop, and instead of a moment he'd once tried to prevent with scissors and sleeping pills. For a moment, no one moved. Then Becca stepped in front of me like a shield. Want me to walk them out? No. I stepped forward. Mom pulled off her glasses. Her eyes looked smaller than I remembered. Her voice was quiet. We're proud of you, Ava. I smiled, the kind of smile people use when they've grown past needing approval. That's funny. You haven't been proud of me since I chose my own college. Dad cleared his throat. We all make mistakes. Families heal, right? I tilted my head. Sure. Some do. But that depends on whether the wounds were accidental or intentional. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I nodded toward the guest book at the front desk. If you'd like to leave feedback, there are cards over there. We take it seriously. They stood there confused, unsteady. I didn't fill the silence for them. Instead, I turned back to the mic and faced the crowd gathering behind the windows. Thank you all for being here today. This space isn't about making noise. It's about making space for stories that weren't allowed to be told, for voices that were interrupted mid-sentence, for anyone who was told to shrink themselves to keep someone else comfortable. I paused. And if you've ever been cut down, this space is yours now, too. Applause. Real, roaring, alive. When I looked back, my parents were gone. No note, no apology, just empty space where power used to live. And I didn't miss it. The other side of the blade. I didn't expect her to show up. Not after everything. Not after the silence. Not after standing there, wiping tears at her engagement party. Saying nothing while Mom and Dad were being escorted out behind me. But Lily had never been predictable. Not in the way people thought. The knock on the studio door came 2 weeks after the launch event. It was early, just after opening, before the interns arrived. I assumed it was Becca with coffee. Instead, it was her. Lily stood outside, arms folded across her chest, eyes shadowed by fatigue or shame. I couldn't tell which yet. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, her clothes plain, too plain for someone raised to pose. I didn't open the door right away. She waited. I finally cracked it open. Only halfway, Ava, she said. I didn't answer. I stared at her. She looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just standing taller now. Why now? She hesitated. Then, quietly, I didn't know what they were going to do to you. My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. You knew enough. You saw me walk in that day. You saw my hair. I thought it was your choice. You've always been dramatic. There it was, the old script, still alive, still twitching in her mouth like a dying fish. I started to close the door. Wait, Lily said quickly. Please, I stopped. She reached into her purse and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. She held it out, shaking. What's that? She unwrapped it. It was the original printed toast. The one my parents had written. But this copy had handwriting on it. Her handwriting. She'd scribbled out entire paragraphs, replaced them, rewritten whole lines in red pen. I didn't want to use their version, she said. I never meant for you to read that one. But they took it from me. Told me you needed to stay on script. Why are you giving this to me? Because I didn't say anything that day, and maybe I should have. But now I need something from you. I folded my arms. Of course. She blinked hard. I'm divorcing Nate. That part hit like a dull knock against my ribs. I didn't care about Nate. Not really. But I'd been burned by the entire circus that came with their wedding. Their perfect life. Their curated photos. All of it built on the silence I'd been forced to keep. What happened? He told me he married the wrong sister. That part didn't hurt. It felt honest. She kept going. You were right. About all of it. They controlled everything. Me. You. Even if they wrote everything, we just performed it, and now I want out. And I need your help, not money. Just your name. She looked up, eyes sharp for the first time in years. I want to speak out. About the pressure, the manipulation. What it's like to be the one they chose, and still never feel like it was yours. But no one will listen to the golden girl unless someone like you stands beside her. You want to stand beside me. I want to stand behind you, Ava. The words hung between us, honest, unpolished. I looked down at the torn-up speech in my hands, at the places where she tried to say something else. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Or maybe she had her own version of the same cage, just gilded differently. I opened the door a little wider. Come in. And just like that, the narrative changed. Again, the rewrite. We sat in the back of the studio, near the big windows where the afternoon sun turned the white walls gold. Becca had stepped out to give us space. The interns were gone. It was just me and Lily, and the ghost of everything we'd never said out loud. She sat across from me with her hands folded, like a student waiting to be graded. I leaned back in my chair. Start talking. She didn't flinch. I expected her to. But she didn't. I was 15 the first time Mom told me you were jealous of me, she said. We were in the car after a recital. You'd just gotten into the advanced English program. I was crying because I messed up a few notes. She told me not to feel bad. Said girls like you always needed to be reminded who the real star was. I stared at her, my chest tight. She said Ava's not ugly, but she has to try harder. That's why she's always showing off. That's not what I was doing. I know that now, Lily said. But I didn't back then. And when you got the college scholarship, they made me feel like it was some kind of threat, like your success meant I was failing. That was the system, I said. Not me. I know, she said. I see it now. Then why didn't you stop them? I didn't know how. I was just surviving, like you. Only I was surviving in a prettier cage. I looked at her. For a second, I almost saw us as kids again. Both of us trying to be what they wanted. One of us punished for not shining enough. The other punished for shining too brightly. It wasn't your fault they cut my hair, I said finally. But you didn't stop it either. She nodded, eyes glassy. That's why I'm here. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. I've written a statement. I want to release it. About the family. About how they used us. How they turned us into competition and called it love. You think people will care what you have to say now. I think they'll care if we say it together. I picked up the phone. Read her words. They were careful but honest. Not blame-shifting. Not performative. Just real. I'm not doing this to make you feel better. I said I know. I'm doing it because girls like us never get to rewrite the script once the show ends. Then let's start a new one, she said. We sat in silence for a moment, just breathing, and in that stillness I realized something I had won. Not just the speech, not just the job, I had broken the cycle, made room for the truth. And now, for the first time in my life, someone else was following me into the light, not to compete, but to heal. The statement went live on a Thursday morning. It wasn't dramatic. No dramatic music. Just a video, simple lighting, Ava and Lily, facing the camera. 2 sisters, 1 truth, in under 4 minutes. We told the world what it had taken us decades to understand. That sometimes the worst betrayals don't come from strangers, but from the hands that fed you. That love, when weaponized, doesn't just leave bruises. It rewrites who you think you are. Lily talked about the piano lessons and ballet classes that were really just performance prep, about how she was coached not to cry, not to gain weight, not to lose to me at anything, especially not in public. I talked about the silence, about being minimized, edited, trimmed, and how the worst part wasn't what they took. It was how long I believed they were right. We ended it together. We're not here to burn bridges. We're here to stop pretending they weren't already on fire. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in. This explains my entire childhood. I never realized my sister and I were both victims. Thank you for saying what so many of us can't. It hit 1 million views in 48 hours. But not everyone was clapping. That weekend, I got a text from an unknown number. You've made your point. Stop now. No name. No emoji. Just 5 words that made the air leave my lungs. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I got another. You think you're untouchable, you're not. And Lily isn't either. Becca was the first person I showed it to. Her jaw clenched. That's not your mom. That's not her style. No, it wasn't. And it wasn't Lily either. This felt colder, sharper. Not like shame, like control. We went back and checked the email logs from the studio's press inbox. That's when we found it. An earlier message. Buried in spam. From a burner domain. No name, no subject line. Just 2 sentences. It's not over. Family secrets have a cost. Keep digging, and you'll find out why we kept them buried. I looked up at Becca. Someone doesn't want this story told. Becca didn't blink. Then let's tell the whole thing. Because now it was no longer just about revenge. It was about uncovering something they had spent years protecting. Something neither I, nor Lily, fully understood yet. But we were about to, and it was going to get ugly. Buried files. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels loaded, like a breath being held too long. That's what our studio felt like the morning after we got the second text. Becca sat on the couch, scrolling through message boards. Lily was next to me, flipping through old family photo albums like they were crime scene evidence. And me. I was holding a flash drive I hadn't seen in over a decade. I'd found it tucked into the back of a drawer in my dad's old desk. The one I was never allowed to touch growing up. It was labeled in thick black Sharpie taxes 2007. But when I plugged it in, there were no tax documents. Just folders. All password protected. I stared at the screen. My hands were cold. Lily leaned in. Why would he hide this? Becca was already pulling up a password cracking tool. If he used anything predictable, we'll be in within the hour. 15 minutes later, we were in. The folders were filled with voice memos, PDFs, screenshots, all sorted under strange clinical names. One folder was titled Radadan Dhtar. Another, Brian Concral. Lily leaned in, her face pale. Click that one. Inside were emails between our parents and a consultant. A reputation strategist, apparently. Someone they'd hired after Lily's freshman year scandal. When photos of her drinking got leaked online. She was 17. The emails were chilling. If Ava continues to post photos with her, it weakens the clean brand image we've built. We recommend separating them socially and using Ava's difficult reputation to create a clear contrast. Another, long-term goal Ava chaos. Lilied elegance. Lily put a hand to her mouth. They engineered this. Becca was already flipping through the other folders, guys. She turned her laptop around. There was a file titled Dorm Monitor Log of Ah. They had screenshots of my social media from college. Notes on the guys I'd dated. Notes on my GPA, my therapy schedule. Even timestamps for when I visited certain professors. Why would they keep this? Control, Becca said flatly. Power comes from knowing everything. Especially when you're the one pulling the strings. Lily looked like she might throw up. There's more. She pointed at one last folder. PCNASURNC, we opened it. Inside, scanned documents for a life insurance policy taken out in Lily's name. But not by her. By our parents. Becca squinted. Wait, that date doesn't make sense. The policy was signed 3 weeks after Lily's overdose. The one she'd always been told was an accident. Lily whispered, they told me I had food poisoning. that it wasn't a big deal. But they wouldn't let me talk to the doctor afterward. Becca said what I couldn't. They lied. All of it. All of this, it wasn't just about appearance. It was about control, ownership, managing outcomes. We weren't daughters, we were assets. And somewhere along the way, I had stopped being profitable. So they tried to erase me. But Lily, she'd been their golden ticket, and now we both knew too much. I looked at them, my voice steady. We're going to take all of this. Every file, every receipt, and we're going to burn the whole illusion down. No more trimming. No more silence. This ends now. The first headline hit Monday morning. Maid of honor meltdown, viral sister's troubled past raises eyebrows. I read it twice, then once more just to be sure it was real. Becca stormed into the room before I could finish. They're running with it. What? The leak. Someone gave the press your college transcripts, therapy records, even that one dorm fight from junior year. They're painting you as unstable, jealous, bitter. Lily appeared behind her, face pale. This is coordinated. It's not just rumor. This is a campaign. We all looked at each other. No one had to say it out loud. It was our parents. Or someone working for them. The old machine had woken back up, and it was hungry. Becca's phone buzzed again. Another article. Trimmed no more. Founder once accused of threatening fellow student. Sources say it wasn't true. Not in the way they were spinning it. Back then, I'd stood up to a guy who had posted photos of me without my consent. I'd yelled. I'd told him he'd regret it. That was the threat they were twisting. They were using my defense against me. Lily grabbed the laptop and scrolled through the comments. She gasped. They're calling you the villain, saying I'm just your puppet now. My throat tightened. That was the play. Divide us. Make me look dangerous. Make her look brainwashed. Dismantle everything we'd built by turning it into a performance. Becca didn't blink. We need to go public. With everything. The flash drive, the files, the consultant emails. Not yet, I said. Why not? Because we release it now, we're reactive. We look like we're scrambling. Then what do? We change the narrative. Again, we don't just respond, we reframe it. Becca folded her arms. How? We take control the same way they did. Visibility. Precision. We go to someone they don't control. Lily looked up. Her voice was quiet. I know someone. A journalist. Real one. She did a piece last year on image manipulation in elite families. She won't spin it. You trust her. More than I ever trusted them. I nodded once. Then we give her everything. The files, the timelines, even the mistakes. Mine included. Becca hesitated. That's risky. It's real, I said. And we don't win this by playing safe. We win it by telling the truth louder than they can lie. I turned back to my laptop. They wanted to make me the unstable one, the bitter girl, the attention-seeking sister. But they forgot one thing. I don't need to prove I'm perfect. I just need to prove they're not. And now I had the receipts, the fallout. The article dropped on a Wednesday. It wasn't a blog post. It wasn't a tweet thread. It was a front-page feature in the Chronicle titled Manufactured Daughters. Inside the quiet abuse of performance parenting, the journalist, Naomi Keene, didn't pull punches. She laid out everything, the leaked files, the branded language our parents used to describe their own children, the false overdose cover-up, even the voice memos. She included testimony from Lily and me. She quoted Becca. She even traced the reputation consultant, who, it turned out, had worked with at least 6 other families in our city's elite circles. Within hours, it was everywhere. National news, morning talk shows, podcasts, Twitter trending topics. The response was massive. Most people called it brave, unforgivable. A mirror held up to a suburban culture obsessed with perfection and punishment. But not everyone celebrated. Because that's when he reached out. The text came from a number I hadn't seen in years. You really don't stop, do you? My blood ran cold. I knew who it was before I opened the contact. Nathan. Lily's ex-husband. The one who left her weeks after the wedding. The one who told her he'd married the wrong sister. I hadn't spoken to him since I called him a coward in a parking lot. And yet now, here he was. Lily looked at the message and went white. He never texted me after he left. She whispered, not once. Becca took the phone. Ava, you don't owe him anything. But Nathan wasn't done. The next message came 5 minutes later. If you're gonna tell the truth, maybe it's time you told the whole thing. Like why you were in my car the night before the wedding. My stomach dropped. Lily looked up slowly. You were in his car? I froze. It was one conversation, I said. I told him not to go through with it. I told him he wasn't ready. That he didn't love you the way you deserved. Becca stepped in. That doesn't sound like a betrayal, Ava. That sounds like honesty. But Lily's face had changed. She was replaying every moment I hadn't mentioned that night. Every photo, every silence. You never told me, she said. Because I knew how it would sound. Did he try something? I shook my head. Not physically, but he said things. Inappropriate things. Stuff I didn't want to repeat. But you didn't tell me. Because I thought it was over. And I thought I'd already taken enough from you. Lily sat down hard. And that's when Nathan sent one more message. One of your little fans sent me the article. I kept receipts too. Maybe I start sharing mine. Becca's hands curled into fists. He's trying to blow everything up. Not because he wants to help them, but because he wants to burn you. Because I exposed them, because I exposed him. I stood up. Then we expose him first. Lily looked at me. Are you sure? No, I said. But I'm done letting people hide behind my silence. She nodded. Then let's go all the way. That night, I uploaded the recording I'd kept buried for over a year. It was taken in his car. Before the wedding. When he thought no one would ever hear him. Nathan's voice, clear as day. If you were the one in that dress, maybe I'd be excited. But you're the kind they hide. You're the one who scares them. Then laughter. Then silence. Then me, saying, get me out of this car. Now, it hit 1 million plays in 6 hours. The rest, the screenshots, the texts, the timeline, followed, and suddenly his name was trending too. Only this time, not as a groom, not as a victim, as exactly what he'd always been. A predator in a rented tuxedo. The last cut. The studio lights were blinding. I'd never been on national TV before. This wasn't a podcast or a panel discussion. This was the Maria Lane show, watched by millions. The same show my mother used to watch every afternoon while folding laundry and silently comparing me to every daughter who wasn't hers. Now I was the guest. Becca stood backstage whispering logistics with the producers. Lily sat in the front row, phone off, back straight ready. I stood near the curtains, microphone clipped, nerves buzzing beneath my ribs, until I saw him, across the green room, arms crossed, wearing a smug, too small suit, my father. What the hell is he doing here? The producer appeared beside me. He reached out this morning, said he wanted to speak. Off air. Said he wanted closure. I turned to her. You let him in. He said he had a statement. Said it might matter to you. I walked toward him. He didn't flinch. You have 1 minute, I said. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. This is everything I couldn't say before. Your mother's gone. She left. After the article. After the neighbors stopped speaking to us. After Lily filed the lawsuit. I don't blame her. You mean she ran, I said. He nodded. I deserve that. He handed me the paper. I opened it. At first glance, it looked like an apology. But it wasn't. It was a contract. A cease and desist. A legal attempt to shut me up, tied to a settlement offer. 6 figures. Blood money. He still thought this was about cash. About leverage. He still didn't understand that I'd already taken everything I needed. My voice, my audience, my truth. I folded the paper, placed it in my blazer, and stepped back. This isn't for you anymore. Then I turned and walked on stage. The applause was thunderous. But my heart stayed calm. Maria Lane leaned forward with that signature smile. Ava, the world has watched your story unfold. The question everyone's asking now is what's next? I looked straight into the camera. What's next? We opened 10 more Rami studios across the country. We fund scholarships for daughters who were told they were too much. We launch a legal defense program for people escaping image-based abuse. We give the spotlight to those who were made to feel like shadows. The crowd erupted, and I wasn't finished. And what's next for me? I smiled. I write the book. I tell everything, even the parts I was too scared to say on stage today. And I name names. Maria looks stunned. You're publishing? No, I'm publishing myself. The screen behind us lit up. A cover design, a title in clean, bold font, Scissors. By Ava Ellis, subheading, What They Cut, What I Reclaimed, and What I'll Never Let Go Again. The audience rose, and for the first time in my life, the whole world stood for me. That night, as I left the studio, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We thought we silenced you. I stared at it. Then I replied, You gave me the mic. I'm just getting started. And I hit send. Some stories don't end with apologies. They end with understanding. And if there's one thing Ava's story reminds us, it's this: silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes, silence is a wound, a tool, a leash. And the most powerful thing you can do is cut it. This wasn't just a story about a haircut. It was about a life trimmed down to fit someone else's comfort. And the choice to take that life back. It was about learning that speaking up will cost you, but staying quiet will cost you everything. It was about the truth. Unpolished, uncomfortable, but necessary. And the courage to say, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be real. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen, or reminded you of someone who's still stuck in silence, share it. Comment what moment hit you the hardest. Like if you believe no one should ever have to shrink to be loved. Subscribe to Telling Story with me for more real stories, told with fire and truth. Because this isn't just a channel. It's a place for every voice that once got cut short. And here, you don't need permission to be powerful.